Well, guys, it looks like Donald Trump and his cronies have now indicted James Comey. So we're going to get into this indictment.
In Virginia by a grand jury tonight. He is charged with 2 criminal counts. We have major breaking legal news. The Trump Justice Department has now indicted former FBI Director James Comey. This is in Virginia by a grand jury tonight. He is charged with 2 criminal counts. MSNBC reporting those charges. ABC News reporting the 2 counts are false statements and obstruction of justice. We do not have the actual indictment paper yet, and this is a developing breaking story. It also comes after reports of unusual and extreme pressure from the president on that department's office, basically after the acting U.S. attorney for that same district departed, and allegedly there is internal memoranda that doubted whether this new indictment of James Comey should even go forward. Prosecutors reportedly finding there was insufficient evidence. But now, former FBI Director Comey indicted tonight, capping a many-year saga of his criticism and clashes with President Trump and questions hanging over the validity of this kind of case. I'm joined by MSNBC Justice correspondent Ken Dilanian. Ken?
Ari, good to be with you. So the indictment, we just got word that it happened. It was handed down by this grand jury in the Eastern District of Virginia after the case was presented to the grand jury for several hours this afternoon, we are told. And the 2 counts, as you mentioned, making false statements and obstruction of justice. We don't have the details, so we don't know if it's, as we have assumed, that it would be connected to the statement that James Comey made to the Senate 5 years ago that was closing in on the statute of limitations lapsing on Tuesday. That was a statement where he was asked whether he had authorized leaks to the media, and he said he did not. And there was an account given by his deputy, Andrew McCabe, that differed from that. This has been known for years, by the way, and explored in an Inspector General report, among other things. We are reporting that career prosecutors in that office did not believe there was enough evidence to proceed with this case. And they even wrote a memo to the acting U.S. Attorney, 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐞, saying as much and saying that not only do they not think they could get a conviction beyond a reasonable doubt from a jury, but they said that there wasn't probable cause to move forward with the case, which is the standard for a grand jury indictment. But obviously this grand jury found otherwise. Of course, as our viewers probably know, the grand jury process is essentially a tool of prosecutors. Right. Grand jurors do not hear from the defense. They don't hear from the defendant. They hear only what the prosecutors want them to hear. And so, you know, there's an old saying that a grand jury would indict a ham sandwich. And in this case, they've indicted the former FBI director on false statement charges that a lot of people think are specious.
This is an extraordinarily unusual process that led up to this. The President of the United States publicly calling for the Comey indictment by name, interfering or meddling. It could be a case for selective prosecution, but you need more evidence. We need to learn more. But the breaking news tonight, 2 counts, false statements and obstruction, and the unusual lead up. Where does that put this case? What footing is it on going forward, given that extraordinary intervention by Donald Trump and him all but admitting that he wanted this done, that he wanted this against what he views as a foe, separate from perhaps the legal evidence?
Oh, extraordinary is a good word for it, Ari. It's unprecedented. We've never seen this before in post-Watergate American history and probably pre-Watergate American history. A president publicly calling for his Justice Department to charge particular individuals. That's what happened. And then this particular individual, James Comey, was charged. And it happened after the U.S. attorney in this district, who had been appointed by Donald Trump and who we have reported was raising questions about this case, was forced out of office by Donald Trump. So the stage is set here for a federal judge to take a look at this and say that this was not appropriate. But you're right, that's an argument, a legal argument that James Comey's lawyers will have to make to the judge that draws the case, and they'll have to present evidence. And a lot, I think, will depend on the strength of the evidence in this indictment. Because as you know, vindictive prosecution is one matter. That's not something that goes before the jury. If the case is strong enough, oftentimes that can be overcome because essentially if the evidence is there, the mindset of the prosecutor is less important. In this case, we believe the evidence is thin, and there's ample evidence that Donald Trump orchestrated this matter by replacing the U.S. attorney and then,
whether it was called
lobbying his attorney general.
Yeah, and as you say, pressure on the attorney general and changing the person in charge of an office that, according to reporting, had recently come to the opposite conclusion. There wasn't a case. Ken, reporting on a major development. Please stay with us. I want to bring in former U.S. Attorney Joyce Vance, who has overseen exactly such an office for the Department of Justice. Your response to this news tonight?
Well, of course, I think people are stunned given the president's involvement in this case and Ken's reporting that senior prosecutors in the Eastern District of Virginia felt the case shouldn't go forward. But Ari, we haven't seen the indictment yet. There is some reporting that it's a 2-count indictment. It will be important to see the substance of those charges before we evaluate them. And of course, to see the opening moves that Comey's legal team makes in response to this.
When you look at the legal team's opening response, where would they want to start? Walk us through that process. And given the primacy of former FBI Chief Comey, who ultimately testified basically about Donald Trump's efforts to then take what he called more direct control or possible interference with law enforcement, with the FBI that he ran. Now he's on the other end of that arm, the DOJ and the FBI. What would be the first steps we're going to see next from his side?
So full disclosure, I've never been a criminal defense lawyer, but I've worked with plenty of them. And I think that they'll look both at the substance of the case. They'll want to understand what the charges are. They'll want to get discovery. A very important issue when you've got prosecutions involving false statements and obstruction is that the statements that a defendant is charged with making have to be material. That means they have to be important to the outcome of the proceeding that they were made during. So there will be that focus. They'll get discovery pretty early in this case. The Eastern District of Virginia is a rocket docket. Things move very quickly there. So they'll be looking for that information.
And as you're saying that, I'm going to tell, pardon my interruption, Joyce, I'm going to tell viewers, we just saw a few people run out of that very courthouse. We can't say from witnessing it whether they're running for this or a different case, of course. I don't know yet. But you are seeing some activity there that is later than normal hours. They're approaching the 7 p.m. hour. And we are awaiting, of course, getting the paper. If there's an indictment, that's a government process. It'll be released according to normal course. So we're seeing some flurry of activity there. Joyce, please continue your point.
Yes, that suggests that the clerk's office has just docketed something that was of interest to people who may not have accessed it on the government's PACER system. We'll see if that was the indictment itself. The other thing that the defense will be interested in this case, of course, will be pursuing what you and I talked about earlier, this idea that there might be motions to dismiss any prosecution because of selective and vindictive prosecution. Those should likely play out before a trial would be set in this case. Those will be among the sorts of preliminary motions that whichever judge this is assigned to will consider.
We have a brand new statement posted online from the Attorney General, Pam Bondi. As recently as today, there were reports that she was also doubtful about this case. While she doesn't mention it by name, I'll read exactly what you see here. No one is above the law. Today's indictment reflects DOJ's commitment to holding those who abuse positions of power accountable for misleading the American public. That is how she puts it. Again, the effort on and the attention on misleading, that rising, according to the DOJ indictment, to what they're going to argue is a criminal level. A false statements charge, which Joyce Vance, you were just explaining, requires meeting a certain bar of materiality. We don't have the indictment yet, but the reporting prior was that this was reference to Comey answering a question about the general news and leaks policy at DOJ and basically whether he was fully briefed on Clinton-related matters. With our final 30 seconds, your final thoughts.
Well, look, I think this is a good moment for us to all, before we jump to conclusions, wait to see the indictment, wait to see the response from Jim Comey's team. There are still barriers in the criminal justice system that prevent miscarriage of justice. A grand jury has decided that they will issue an indictment here, apparently, But there are other issues going forward, including a judge and a jury. Let's let the system work like it's intended to.
Right.